All right. I think we might be live in the right place now. Hello, hello, hello. What is up, everybody? It's so nice to see all of these faces, faceless faces out there. Thanks for
All
bearing with
right.
us.
I
Oh
think
man, the tech stuff. So I thought I was being super fancy and I upgraded my Zoom last night to the business version, which is like the super pro version. And then now it wouldn't let me log in and it was saying admin stuff. And anyway, whatever. We're here. We are live. So welcome, welcome, welcome to Design Your Dream Online Live Show. I'm your host, Laura Escade. Thanks so much for coming, guys. So awesome to see y'all out there in the world. I'm going to just do a little presentation before I announce my very special guest artist who's waiting in the wings. So let me go ahead and do that. I'm so excited that you guys are here. And it's so funny, like, of course, the tech problems and Zoom and the permissions. And I had like some background music that was playing and it was super dope. But hey, we're here. We're here. So we learned. Don't upgrade your Zoom to the professional, to the business version the day before you have a big event. All right, so you guys should be seeing my screen. So welcome to the event. It's so amazing that we get to do this. I'm just so stoked you guys are all here. So I'm Laura. We are at this event because I want to share a bunch of knowledge about live performance with these three badasses. So I've got Keeley, Dresage. I've got Sudan Archives and myself. I'm calling myself a badass. I don't know. I just call myself a badass. Two other badasses and I'm, something. Um, my mission is to empower artists to cultivate their own original voice in the live performance space, encourage positive and healthy relationships, and build community by sharing resources. So, Transmute is my brand, and that is my mission. And so, for those of you out there who don't know who I am, I'm a performer. This is me at South by Southwest last year performing. I'm also a playback engineer, and I've been behind the scenes with artists like Kanye West, and I've DJ'd with artists like Kaiza and Iggy Azalea, and I've worked on American Idol as a playback engineer the last couple of years, as well as I've performed in the Grammys the last 2 years. Worked with a bunch of other amazing artists like Logic and helped build his rig and his show. And I'm the creator of the Transmute Accelerator. And we are actually running a new version of Transmute, which starts next week. And so this is kind of like the precursor to Transmute to give you guys a taste of what it's all about. Here's some images of us all hanging out on Zoom, nerding out. Here's my homie Da Vinci showing his push chops and Rachel Collier. If you guys saw Rachel on the Loop broadcast the other day, just chat in the comments and let me know if you saw Rachel. And as well, we've got a community called the Transmute Community. It's on Facebook. And so if you guys go over to Facebook and find this, you can join us in the community. If you join us in the community, we are doing a Transmute from Home performance challenge. So this is for artists to upload their performances from home, and the lucky winner will win a session with yours truly. So very excited about that. So go over, join us on Facebook. And so the next slide is to introduce our very special guest, Miss Keeley, aka Dresage. And Keeley is a transmutant. She did Transmute 2.0, And she is just an incredible artist, performer. She was just in Andrew Huang's For Producers video the other week. I don't know if you guys saw that, but it was so, so cool. She's just an amazing woman, an amazing light, and I just can't wait to welcome her to the stage, the virtual stage here with you guys on YouTube. So welcome, Keeley.
I'm now unmuted. Hi.
Hi. How are you?
I'm great. How you doing?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. Like the whole Zoom permissions thing was just like throwing me for a loop there. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, it's kind of funny. Like after doing shows for like huge crowds for many many years, it's always kind of like that anticipation right before. You're like, all right, is everything gonna work? Is it gonna work as planned? And sometimes it doesn't, and you just gotta roll with it and just not ever give up. So I was like trying everything. We ended up logging into Keely's Zoom account, you guys.
Now your name is me.
I don't think they can see that though. We're both Keely today, whatever. So anyway, welcome. I would just love to talk with you. Well, actually, at first, before we talk with you, I would love to show some videos of you performing, just to give some people some context about where you come from with your live performance.
Yeah,
And then we can kind of talk through, and then you're going to show us your Ableton Live set, and we're going to do a little playing around, right?
yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. So let me go back to sharing my screen. So this is a video. When was this video made, the output video?
I think it was made in 2018, so a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was
Cool.
kind of like at the era that I was still playing with a band and knowing that I wanted to incorporate all this stuff, but had like just started dipping my toes in. So
Yeah. Okay. Let's check it out.
Marking the time and places I thought I was the center, the center. I could have done it better, blame it on the weather. In an opinionated hell where everyone tries to sell their very existence in a jar and blending in is harder than living in the center, the center, the center. I could have done it better if only I'd remembered. I'm breaking under pressure, cause nothing is forever. Whoa. I feel traces of joy. I'm a broken toy. I will try. I will keep it inside for life.
Oh my gosh. What I'm like,
with the triangle.
I need to take some vocal lessons. You're making me want to take some vocal lessons. Wow. So good. Tell us about this experience. Also, she had a harp, y'all. Who has a harp?
I mean, to be honest, I really just stumbled into huge luck with that. Like one of my best friends is this incredible harp player, so I lovingly exploit her talent all the time.
Oh my God, so amazing. So tell us, what is the name of the song, and tell us a little bit about the song.
Yeah, so this song is called Center. It's actually the first song I released as Dresage. And I kind of, yeah, I would say it's kind of like it's funny. A lot of people are starting to make the connection between Center and the song I just released from the For Producers video that I did called Holy. It's got a lot of similar sort of like audio chops, but used melodically, and kind of like manipulation of audio, which is something that I really love to do. So the song is kind of this like all of my songs. I always say that my songs aren't really about love anymore. They're just about like me trying to figure out my psyche and the human psyche, and processing whatever I'm going through that way. So this song was sort of coaching myself through this growth period of needing to grow up essentially, and hopefully having come up a little more better on the other side. Um, so yeah, the song I co-wrote it with my friend Greg Martin. We started producing it together, and then I kind of took all the stems and manipulated it. I was still producing in Pro Tools at that point, so it's been cool to as I've transitioned into Ableton for my DAW and producing. I've also gotten comfortable with that, and then moved it into my live show. Yeah.
So awesome. Um, I know people are like blowing up the comments now, and I'm sure there's a ton of questions. So just make sure you remember your questions, and we'll take some at the end. So I would love to show now another video, which is you performing solo. So Keeley was a student in my Transmute program last fall, and we had well, actually, she performed a solo show, kind of like midway through, right? It's just totally unrelated. But was this your first time doing the solo show?
Yeah, I had done one show before that I was incorporating Ableton with, but I still had a band with me. But this was my first one that I was like doing fully just me, which
Oh
was really
my gosh.
scary.
And I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was so cool. It was like your biggest fan in the front row. So yeah, let's do share again, and we're gonna play a little bit of this. So amazing. Oh,
Thanks.
God. Very, very cool.
Yeah, the fun part about that was I was using a TC Helicon voice pedal, and had forgotten to turn off talk. So I didn't have any of my effects for my voice at that time. But, every show I'm learning, and I have continued to humbly learn most days of my life, is that everything is a learning opportunity. Nothing's perfect, and I won't make that mistake again. So that's cool.
Just like I won't make the mistake of upgrading to the Zoom business the day before an event, and now my name is permanently Keeley.
Hey, we can all be named Keeley. Dresage parentheses Keeley.
I just wanted to be like you.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us a little bit more. So you actually, I see that you had the harp on stage. You had Laura come up and you had her perform a couple songs. Tell us how you felt during this performance. Like, how was it for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was nerve-wracking for sure because I was opening for a wonderful artist named Belle Saint, and I mean, as an opening act, you really get an afterthought sound check if a line checks for me. And so having all this new technology added in was like extra nerves and then very little time to check it. So it was kind of just like having to get used to I don't know, the uncertainty of technology. Um, but I, yeah, I think that it was also my first show with these visuals I had made. So it felt very immersive for me to be performing in front of this like world that I'd created visually with my friend Jaden. We filmed a bunch of weird stuff with slime and like, I don't know. Yeah. So it was cool. It felt very aesthetic and it felt like the beginning of figuring out what I kind of knew where I want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And was your performance technically? I remember you saying there was a couple things, right? I mean, let's talk about things that don't work sometimes. Sometimes things don't work, right?
Yeah.
I did actually like speaking of not working, I figured out. I just reread your text message because we're like texting each other in the background, y'all. And she's like, "You can rename yourself in Zoom." I was like, "What?"
It's actually a new thing. Yeah, you used to have to sign in and do it on their like website, but you can now do it within the app.
Hot tip, you guys. So even if you sign in on someone else's account, you can rename it. Yeah, hot tip. Okay,
Really
anyway,
just a Zoom workshop. We're trying to figure out how it works.
I digress. Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about what didn't go right that night.
Well, I think that what didn't go right was mostly just like nerve related things. So on the Voice Live, there's a talk button which takes off all of your effects, and then when you have that off, your effects are working. And so I have all of these pre-programmed messages that are going to the Voice Live Touch because I'm doing a combination of running my vocal through Ableton, but then also taking most of the processing power off and leaving it within the Voice Live so that my computer isn't like bogged down. Um, so yeah, a lot of time spent programming things that just like didn't work for some songs because of my own error of not enabling them. Um, I think there were some CPU things that like you could definitely hear some pops and clicks from a CPU heavy piano that I was using because I use my synth, my Rev 2 Prophet, and so I'm switching between using it as an analog synth and then also as a MIDI controller so I can play piano because my songs tend to have a fair amount of piano in them, especially the first EP. So being able to have that I think like there were definitely some clicks and pops and computer being like, what are you asking of me?
I remember hearing just a few things, but it wasn't like terrible. You know, it
Yeah.
was like, oh, I hear a little thing.
Yeah.
It
And I would
wasn't
just look
like
out in the audience.
showstopper.
Yeah, no, I was like, I know Laura heard that. but I don't think anyone else would have heard it. So it's all good.
Yeah, definitely not. Well, I thought it was incredible. And then we had our final performance actually with the Transmutants that lived in LA, which was incredible. And I remember the day that you discovered the patch change stuff in the
Yeah.
course, where you were like, "Oh my God, I can control all the patches to all of my hardware stuff." What was that like for you when you figured that out?
Yeah. So I think maybe like the first time every show is like this new era in the technology that I figure out something new for the next one. So like the first time I think I tried to do any Ableton stuff, I was manually changing to different sounds for my Prophet or changing different octaves. And it was very clunky because I couldn't just perform. I had to be remembering all these like technical choreographed things in order to get to the right sound. And a lot of times it's really hard to accomplish. So I figured out program changes, which basically is it's funny when you're working in your set. For me, it felt like I was like a computer programmer more than a musician half the time because I was just like, if I put this code in, how does it change it? So it's a lot of front end work, but it's very very beneficial because now I have these little messages sent via MIDI from Ableton to my synth that is telling it to go to a different song, telling the oscillator to change to a different frequency, different octave. So I'm not having to jump around on the keyboard. I can just focus and know that these sounds are going to be changing. So that was really exciting because I don't like to perform and feel stressed, you know, it's no fun.
It's certainly not. Yeah, it's like you want everything to just go smoothly, but sometimes, you know, when you're, especially your own artist, you're your own tech, you're setting everything up, like
Yeah.
you gotta wear all the hats, and then you gotta look nice and jump
Yeah.
on stage and have energy and like be like, ready to go.
The whole thing. So mental. Yeah.
It's a lot. Well, I think with that, I would love to dive into your stuff, your session, and you know, just let you kind of take over and show us some things. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna shut up now and let Keeley show you guys her set and some little programming things she did and vocal effects and all that.
Here my screen. Do 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 do. All right. Yeah, I think we're good. So this is my live set as I have last touched it when we were allowed to perform, still in public. I was supposed to have a show like 4 days ago. Obviously that didn't happen. So this is kind of, I mean, I took a lot from Laura and her sort of like template of what her best practices are, and it's very helpful because seeing somebody else's organization makes it feel a little less overwhelming, I think. Um, so basically, I just decided to be in arrangement mode for my live performance because my brain works more that way. This is how I like, this is what it looks like when I'm producing these songs. So I know a lot of people like to be in this mode, in session mode, and it just felt that for me, because my songs are they have, you know, like a layout, they have a form. It felt that it made the most sense to have things kind of predictable and laid out. So with that said, so you want me just to talk about like the layout of my session?
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, I think maybe talk a little bit more about how you chose arrangement view would be.
Yeah.
I think, you know, when we went to that down that road, we were like, okay, could either do session view or arrangement view, and you went with arrangement.
Yeah. So I think I wanted to, I mean, my songs aren't improvisational at all. Like there's a form. So it made sense to be on a grid, to be able to have click in my ears, have cues. I even can send my own little like vocal cues telling me which part of the song or little things that I want to remember, sweet things, if you will. Um, and I am basically running tracks. So I have drums, bass, I have some background vocals, and I'm kind of using what I don't want to be playing live on my SPD trigger for percussive things. And I'll play it in a minute, but you'll see that center is like very, very centered centered around that. Um, and things that I wasn't going to be playing on my synth or singing. So kind of a main part, I would say, like the main things that I'm reaching for and playing are the drum racks. So let me switch my camera view so you can see a little better. Yeah. Okay.
Camera view alert.
What's up? So this is an SPD SX. And in the output video, I had audio loaded into it. So it wasn't connected to a computer. But you are kind of like, you're kept to only 9 pads that way, right? So you can't really have a lot of like ability to change things. And the cool thing about drum racks and about a computer is that it's kind of limitless. So there are more than 9 samples I need to trigger in this song, and I can again set it to change to like this next bank for the next part, if that makes sense. So for example, like the center main chop is this. And then as I'm on the timeline and it's playing, it goes to the next bank, which is what it's not changing to right now because we're not in playback. That's kind of a central part. I also have my synth. I'm going to play a little bit of it because, as you'll see, I have these program change messages. This is where the MIDI is basically telling my Prophet to go to the right setting. So I can start the song. So it starts with the piano. And I'll let it keep playing, and you'll see in the chorus here, it's going to change to the synth sound. So that was really cool when I discovered that, because I would have had to change a bunch of things and it just happened. And that is kind of a reason that's being in arrangement mode and having an arrangement felt like it just made more sense for my brain. Yeah.
Can you show us how you're doing these program changes?
Yeah. I haven't done these in a minute. So yeah, so basically like the Prophet is this synth that I'm using. And you do a lot of manual diving and you find out which numbers correspond with which things. So this is basically, oh man, Laura, I haven't done this in a long time. I'm not going to remember it.
Oh yeah. You get the program 12 there and the program change.
Oh yeah, exactly. There we go. Yeah, so so I've built my patch on my synth, and so I am telling it to go to that specific one, which is kind of cool. And then I also build in on the mod wheel, I build a filter open. So later in the song, I'll use that. To be in the chorus to get to that sound. So that's fun. Another cool thing about the synth is because it's going into my into Ableton, I'm able to sidechain it. And so a big part of this song is sort of this like lilting pump that you feel from the audio ducking from hearing a trigger of a kick drum. And so you can see on my compressor, wait, that's not the one, sidechain compressor. So this is automated to be off right now, but in the moments when it's the synth sound, it's the chorus, and I want it to be, pumping up and down, the sidechain compressor turns on and it is affecting that audio from my synth. And then it turns back off when I need to go to a MIDI piano sound. Yeah, so it takes just so much time to like program all of this, but once I did, it's there. And now I've even forgotten how to do it because it's there and I don't have to think about it anymore.
I mean, I think that's kind of it, right? Just
Yeah.
programming it so that you can actually be who you want to be on stage and not be thinking about changing all of these things and
Totally.
moving knobs to land on a specific preset or, pressing a button. Just having the third hand. I mean, I use program changes. I use CliffX as well as a tool as like a third hand when I'm performing to just automate things. So it's really, I think, imperative just because, I know you as an artist, you want to still keep that connection with your audience while you're on stage. You're not trying to be like looking at your laptop the whole time.
No, yeah. It's an interesting balance because I want to feel like I don't know, being an artist and hiring a band is wonderful, but it's expensive. And a lot of times like we're not making money or barely enough to hire people. So having the ability to have this sort of be the nucleus of what my show is very economically empowering for me, but it's also, I don't know, it gives me a lot to then add and subtract from, which is nice. Um, what did you just say? I just totally lost my train of thought.
Just so about like connecting with the audience.
Yes. Oh, right. Okay. So the other side of that is that I feel sometimes that I'm like closed off behind a spaceship, and I don't know, it's a balance. I want to be able to connect with the audience and not be like behind this desk, but also I want to be able to, live my productions in a way that feels good to the songs.
Absolutely, absolutely. So how how did you set up your set? Do you have songs that are kind of blending at all, or is it stop and start? And like, how did you?
I do have songs. I kind of have mapped out where I'm gonna stop and what songs will just go into the next ones. And I think that there's always continual room to keep building that. I know I bought the set list plugin, and that's something that I want to play with once I get back into this of playing live. But right now, as like a fail safe, I have a stop track. So at the end of every song, basically things won't keep playing. And that's really important because you don't want to be talking and then have the next. Oh, wait, it didn't stop. Yeah.
Did you just have that? Was that through IAC, or how did you have that?
I can't remember.
Oh yeah, your IAC is off. So
Oh, that would be why.
yeah, yeah.
But anyways, when that is working, yes, I have a stop track after songs. I also am just like double checking and looking and making sure things aren't playing back when they don't need to be. Um, and then, yeah, I would love to build out more, like more moments of improv or just like built out moments of being able to loop or more moments of extended songs. And that's something that I for sure am gonna get into.
Heck yeah, that's awesome. Um, so what else about your set can you show us? I see like right now you've got your click and your slate off at the top, but you turn those on, when you're performing a show, so you can hear
Yeah.
your in ears.
Yeah, so I have basically buses. I've created these for front of house. I like to be able to give them things that are separated instead of just a two mix. So I have like a drums bus, bass, music, which is kind of just like miscellaneous synth layers or other things that are in background vocals, my lead vocal, and then I have this in ear monitor bus so that I can be sending a slate track, which is telling me cues, telling me the beginning of the song. I can send the click to myself. Um, so that is nice because it doesn't go through the main monitors and no one needs to hear that.
Yeah. And so earlier when we were sound checking, I think this might be kind of cool to show. Do you want to just show the loop back that we set up?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got her set up with loopback so that we could have her in ear mix, and then she could also hear us through Zoom. And so, do you have it up right now? I think you may have only shared your Ableton.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Here,
Oh,
let me just reshare my
I mean,
whole desktop.
yeah, cool.
Okay. Is that you guys see that?
Yeah. So we set up this loopback, guys, so that she can hear me and she can hear everything from Zoom, and then also hear her click in her in ears for through her Apollo. So that was pretty cool because it was like, of course, right before the show, right before the show, we were working on getting this figured out. I, I'm going to tell you guys. You maybe just stop sharing just for a second. I realized like this is hilarious. So the reason why I upgraded to, I figured I should share this because I saw a couple comments in YouTube about like not upgrading right before the show, which is totally right. I didn't actually upgrade Zoom, the software itself, but I upgraded on the back end because I wanted to get rid of this ugly ass watermark I paid $200 to get rid of this ugly watermark. And it's still there because
On you.
it's because I'm vain and I don't want Zoom on this video. But alas, here we are. Thanks
Well,
for, yeah. Anyway, okay, let's keep going. Uh, so there's a lot of questions. I mean, I would love to just see like all of your gear. Like if you could kind of just take us through
yeah.
what you're using for your show, since you've got these like fancy camera angles now and stuff. Yeah.
Check me out. I got a webcam.
Yes.
Okay.
It's
Cool.
awesome.
So yeah, I have my main thing that I'm again doing like a lot of chops with. Go to another song. Some fun wind percussion things. So I'm using this as okay. I'm using this as and this again is SPD SX by Roland. I'm using this as a visual way, you know, like I started out and I could do this on my push with my fingers, but I felt that using drumsticks and having this be sort of a visual way of, you know, hitting a sound felt more interactive from an audience standpoint. I also, without being a drummer, just have like a complete love of percussion and drums. Never even can probably sit behind a drum set in my life, but I really appreciate it. And I think that it's really cool to see somebody hit things. It feels, you know, that I think that sometimes the energy can feel lost when it's not like a live vibrating drum head or something, but I think visually this helps. So that's my soapbox about the SPD. I have in a MIDI fighter twister, and I am controlling vocal racks. I will share my screen again in a second, but just so you can hear, I have basically these 8 are lit up, and I have things that I can control like delay, some reverb. I have some chorus, a little bit of radio. And I find with this past set that I had done, I had all of my program changes like set up for the voice live to just automatically change. But I was feeling that, especially with vocals, that's kind of my main thing. And I feel very expressive. And with effects, I felt that I could have more ability to be in the moment and be a little improvisational with that. So that's where I feel the MIDI fighter, I can get a little bit of that. Even if I'm like on the grid, things are going to a plan, I can still.
Oh my God, that's so sick.
Yeah. So that's really fun. And that makes me feel just, I don't know, like there's a bit of improvisation with effects throws for me, which is great. So those are kind of 2 main controllers I'm using. Maybe I can grab this camera and show you a little bit.
Yeah, do it.
So that is the main. That's my Prophet that I'm using, but also using as a MIDI controller. I also have this LPD8 where I'm kind of doing the administrative work, really. This is my stop start. Actually, it's just a start. Good. Should probably remember to program that differently. And then these are also my levels. So if I'm on stage and I'm like, yo, front of house is really blasting these drums, I can just like pull them down a little bit. So I have drums, bass, music, background vocals on each of these little pots, and that makes me feel like I can have a little more control of
You're
volume.
like, you think that you're mixing this show, but actually,
I know, I'm like, sound good, homie. Yeah, so
Prince, you know, Prince, like, well, he had the front of house mix in his in-ears, like pipe back to his in-ears because he wanted to hear what it sounded like from front of.
art.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing worse, especially, I don't know. Yeah. That was also at the bootleg shows, just wasn't getting it right. And so when your whole show is reliant on the front of house guy because you don't have like, acoustic instruments essentially happening on stage. It's a little tough.
Yeah. Do you use those knobs to control your in-ears too, or is it just?
Yes. Yeah, the top layer have basically levels for my in-ears. So vocals and click are usually the things that I'll boost or drop more of.
Yeah, that's definitely a game changer.
Yeah.
You control it all yourself.
Yeah.
Maybe let's hop into your session again and kind of, I don't know, I would love to just like pick a couple of other things out, and then we've got a ton of questions, so we'll get to those.
I know I keep trying to look, but then I'm like, well, I'm looking on camera at a chat.
Yeah, no, don't.
Okay, so let me just show you. This is this vocal effects rack, which thank Laura, she gave us and me.
Yeah.
So I could basically go in here and change any of these settings that I wanted on, like these are all the different effects that are on this rack. And I'm controlling it with macros, which I've mapped to this MIDI fighter. So that feels very pleasing to look at something and have it happen like that. Beat repeat.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, and maybe we can show some of the drum racks. Basically, I have a bunch of different where are they shown? Oh yeah. Okay, so I can automate where in songs I want the chain selector to go for these drum racks. It sounds very deep. I feel like this maybe is like super nerd land. I'm not sure if it's too confusing, but
Well, most of the people on here
I probably know way
are
more.
friends or transmutants or people that I know, and they're all like super nerds, so they want to know.
Okay, great. So maybe I'll just play the chop part of center, and you can see how it jumps around. So watch for right here. Basically, it's going to go from this drum rack to the next bank, and then the outro is a whole other bank, which is kind of cool. So I'll just start. The next one. I go to my keyboard. So I think that that's fun. That gives me a big win feeling of like, there's not enough pads, but I made enough pads. I tend to do this a lot with my songs. I don't know why, but when I'm thinking of how to translate them to live, I'm thinking of what I can put, things that I can't play that like are pretty necessary as they were produced, the sound. Like for instance, those woodwinds. I'm not gonna like play that on a piano sound. I'd rather just trigger that. So a lot of my songs, I'm thinking of ways that I can kind of break up the signature parts of the production in audio and put them on pads. Yeah.
So what else? I think there were some questions actually about. Actually, we've got someone who needs to hear the whole song. Actually, yeah, that would be amazing. If could you do maybe a little.
Yeah. I could probably. I don't know if I can read.
Mark, this guy Mark wants to hear the whole song.
Mark lives with me. I can't get rid of him. Yeah, maybe I'll do just like the chop and the vocal part because I don't have long enough arms.
And we want you to stop screen sharing for this one because we want to see your face, your beautiful face.
Okay, cool. So let me go to my other fancy angle, and maybe I'll just drop out and go to my keyboard at a time. Yeah. Okay. You get a little bit of vocal. Can't get a word in. Okay. I can't get a word in with myself. So every kind of help. It's like graffiti on my face, marking the time and places I thought I was the center, the center of the center. I could have done it better, blame it on the weather. In an opinionated hell, where everyone tries to sell their very existence in a jar, and blending in is harder than living in the center of the center. I could have done it better. I'm gonna go to my keyboard because it's cool here. That's it.
Yes.
A sad octopus that can't reach all the way.
This is the sound of all the people on YouTube clapping for you. Yes, that's always the interesting thing about performing online. You're like, finish a song, you're like, okay.
Yeah, 20 seconds later, they're like, we liked it.
Oh man, a lot of questions. Is there anything else that you particularly wanted to share about your session before we move to the questions?
I mean, I think that that's really kind of the it's the formula for all of my songs in this set. It's that I'm figuring out what I can trigger with the SPD, what I can pre-program with my synth sounds. It just kind of varies from song to song. So that's the general layout. I will add that I struggled a lot with like the mental use of tracks. I feel like there was a lot of stigma kind of where I came to in my
Yeah, let's talk about that because I remember that from the very beginning when we first started working together.
Yeah, so I've kind of had to reroute my brain and think of it as a way that empowers my songs to be the way that I want them to be rather than a watered down version that isn't fully what they should be, in my opinion. But it is interesting. I went to music school. I heard a lot of, it was kind of the era that backing tracks were really starting to come to be a thing, and they were used and abused. And so I think that there was a lot of, I don't know, like old school minds that thought that was kind of like karaoke. And so I don't know, it's something I continually have to work on in my mind because I know that I'm not doing karaoke, but sometimes it feels a little phony to be playing back a live drum track when I don't have a live drummer.
But you're controlling all that stuff yourself. And you want it to sound a certain way, and it's whatever you make of it. And also, you're doing so many other things. It's like, there's only so much you can do on stage. And like referencing Rachel's loop talk the other day on the Ableton channel, you know, like she has a certain point where her track drops in, you know, I do as well. Like there's improvisational stuff. And then there's a moment where we're like, okay, we're going to connect with the audience now. Like it's not about like trying to play every little thing. It's about the actual performance and our energy on stage. And so I think some nerds forget that.
Yeah. Well, that's alienating to be told, like, yeah, you put up this big shield also. So it's a balance of letting things just be easy. It's not bad to let things be a little bit easier for you, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. I think, you know, one of the questions was about, you know, stems and like what stems and how many stems you have. And like at one point I tried to put like every single stem in my session. It was just getting so bogged down. And I was like, what is the why?
Yeah.
I mean, I mix it the way that I like it, you know, separately, and then I can just bring that mix into my session. And now, if I'm working with another artist and working on their show, obviously you have to have everything in the session because they could at any moment say, like, I want to take out like the top level synth or whatever. But if we're programming our own shows, then we get to do whatever we want.
Sure do.
Yeah, which is
MD and like worker B. We can be like,
artist, MD, tech.
yeah, yes.
All
Yeah,
those.
I think for me, it took a while. I also had a lot of stems bogged down. So it took a while to start to be like, what can be grouped? What do I know I'm probably not going to touch? And do that and make it easier on myself and my computer as I'm performing.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people are loving this. So, yeah, I think there's definitely a balance for sure. Some people are asking about zooming in on the buses. A couple
Yeah.
people, if you could show that. So right now, she obviously we don't have a front of house, and you guys aren't going to be able to listen in multi-channel. So it's actually interesting because I've just recently rerouted all of my sessions because I'm like, well, I'm not going to be doing any multiple outs for some time, so just gonna route it all down to 1 and 2. Yeah, do you want to speak to your routing there?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I come from Pro Tools actually. I switched over to Ableton like probably less than a year and a half ago, 2 years maybe. So this has also been like a humbling thing. 'Cause I was very proficient in Pro Tools, and then coming to this program, I was like, how do you do all the things that I thought were a thing I knew how to do? But one of these things is busing. And so this is cool because you can create these buses. And like I said, I have a snake. I'm in the little corner. This is my snake. So it comes from my interface, and it basically is going out groups.
I was like, what? There's a snake in the corner.
There's a snake. If there were a snake, I'd be gone. Can't do that. So yeah, basically I can choose. These all represent, if you can see where my mouse is, these are all representing the groups. So this is like drums, bass, music, whatever. So the lead vocal is going to my lead vocal group, right? Because that's the only thing that really needs to go there.
And I think this might actually tick another box. People are asking if your vocals are hitting the voice live before or after live.
Well, right now I'm not using the voice live, but I have done it before. So it's my vocal on stage is going right into the voice live, and then it's coming out and it's going into an input in the back of my Motu interface that I use live. And then it's routing into all this fun stuff that is on the multi effects rack so that I can have things that feel like improv for me.
Yeah.
And that was another big fear of I've heard all these things like don't route your vocal through Ableton, man. Like that is asking for it. And you know, I watch like Little Monarch, Casey, who's another one of fabulous artists who took this class with us. She does so much vocal looping in it, and watching the ability within Ableton, just its native plugins like Looper and how powerful that is. is reason for me to be like, I don't care. I'm using Ableton for my voice because I don't want to have to like loop on the voice live. It's clunky, so
Yeah,
able to
yeah.
program away. Efficiency.
Yes, yes. Okay, so I stopped you right when you were going through your routing, though. So let's pick back up there.
You stopped me. Why did you stop me?
Because we got inquiring minds. I see like three different people had the same question, so I was like,
Okay, so what do you want me to know about routing?
I stopped you when we were talking about your sends or your return tracks.
Oh,
So you were just talking about your vocal. So you've got all this stuff, and it's sending out to usually different outputs.
right. Usually it's coming like this will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And that's coming out of the audio snake that I send to front of house from my interface.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I think that answers that question, hopefully for y'all. There's a lot of I'm looking at the questions. Shout out Eugen for putting all the questions in a doc for me, so I don't have to scroll through everything.
Yeah, open that link.
Question: what are you doing with your returns? That's like a lot of people have that question, so it's good. Let's see. How do you remember where on the SPD your samples are? Just practicing, or do you have a concept through every song?
Practicing, but I do like to put it I start from the bottom left, so it kind of helps me visualize it as like what linearly comes next. I can show you. I'm usually starting from here. Oh yeah, this is the outro of a new song called Who I Am. These are little harp plucks that I grabbed.
Ooh, new song.
So I'm mentally, I have a system essentially. And I think that when you're creating things that have limitless setups and configurations, you just have to start your own system in your head and abide by it.
Mm. Absolutely. Are you using stems for your synth sounds like bass, etc.? Yeah, would love to see your stems.
Yeah. Bass I am, yes. Some songs have, let's see, the first 3 have, except for Sediment is a synth bass, but a lot of them are bass guitars. So that's coming out of, like, here's a synth bass from, I do have moments where I'm playing bass, like in the beginning, or the first chorus of this new song, Who I Am, I'm playing bass with my left hand for the first half, and then it comes in on then I go to another synth part, and so then it comes in on the stems. So I've like muted the first half of the chorus essentially so that I can perform it live. I'm playing a kick drum with my right hand on the SPD, and I'm playing bass with my left hand on my keyboard. And then both drums and bass take over in the stems, and then I go up to a higher part on my synth and perform that with both hands.
Nice. Okay. So another question, what are your favorite go-to synths? So you've got some synths in here, and then you play. Yeah, I guess this is more of a general question than just a live question, but yeah, what are your favorite go-to synths?
Well, I have a Sub 37 from Moog for all the bassness that you could ever want. And I have my Prophet Rev 2, which I love. I just got a Mellotron, which I also love. It's not really, I mean, it's kind of a synth. It's also a sampled instrument, I suppose. I love my OP1. I also have a mini log. But also those are all expensive things. So there's so much to be said for soft synths too. I think that Arturia's collection is great. Wavetable is great. Just comes with Ableton. So I've also been from afar admiring Diva and knowing I want to
Mm.
play with it, but I don't ever. So yeah.
The Diva's awesome, and there's no way that you could run that live.
Yeah, CPU.
Using like without bringing your buffer size up to 512 or something. Um, there's a lot of chatter right now going on about backup rigs, and
Ugh.
do you use one?
No, I would like to.
Yeah.
Still at the level where I'm playing these like cute little gigs in LA, and it's not going to be the end of the, like, it'll be awkward if my stuff is dead, but it's not going to be the end of the world.
Yeah.
But I would say definitely, like, once I get up to more of a touring level, and that's the thing again, a backup rig would be great. For sure.
Yeah. I mean,
But
I guess, if you're live streaming, you can just
yeah.
I wonder if Post Malone had a backup rig the other day. Probably. Did you guys see that live stream? I was actually like, I'm not a fan really, but I loved that live stream. I thought it was great. He did the whole Nirvana.
I know, and he started singing, and I was like, okay, Post Malone.
Great. I know. And some people were hitting me up and they're like, "Is this live?" And I'm like, "No." Well, it is. They were all in the same sorry. People were asking me if they were all jamming like over the internet, and I was like, "No, they're all in a house performing in different rooms," which is really cool. Yeah, that they can do that. But yeah, that was really inspiring.
Yeah. The era of playing together on a live stream is really interesting. I actually, like, the first weekend of quarantine becoming a thing, I did a pitch for a vocal for a commercial. That the idea is like super, super early in this whole thing. The idea was to have two people on Zoom from afar singing Lean on Me together. And so we had to like troubleshoot how to do it. And the latency in real time is just too.
That's too crazy. Yeah. I've been doing this Saturday hangout with some Ableton certified trainers who a bunch of them are actually on this stream right now. So shout out to you guys. You know who you are. 11 o'clock PST every Saturday. And we've been experimenting with the software Jamulus.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, a couple of other questions. Everyone's saying like, what is your buffer size? Surprised Laura hasn't asked it yet.
I read that.
Everyone knows my favorite, the most personal. It's so personal.
My buffer size is 128. Thank you very much.
Yeah. There we go. That's my girl.
That's my go-to, like, when I'm recording too. That's 128. And then when you don't need to hear or monitor. I mean, Ableton, I just like, after a while, when I'm in a production and I keep adding vocal tracks, I just take an ear out and mute myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 128 is good. It's manageable for sure. It's really, yeah. Anything over that, I personally can't do it. Okay, some other questions. And we've got a hard out, guys. So, because Keeley's, she's got stuff to do. So, but we can take a couple more questions. I think like this is more of a general question as well. But Keeley, what setup do you recommend for a solo artist in a show? Like the video in the beginning. So like, I don't know. What would you recommend an artist get if they're like just starting out and they kind of want to dip their toes in? And also people want to know like what your interface is and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, for sure. Well, my setup right now is a MacBook.
Well, but Keeley, what setup do you... Oh, sorry. I clicked on the on YouTube and it unmuted it. Yeah. Anyway, we're listening to ourselves in the past. Yeah.
So my setup is a MacBook Pro laptop. I have a Motu Lite 2 something interface.
Ultralight.
But isn't it like a Mark II, MK2? Anyways, doesn't matter. I have my MIDI fighter. And so basically I kind of like I create sort of like a semicircle for myself. I have my drum pad right here. And then I have my computer and my transport control LPD stuff. And then my MIDI fighter I put on top of my synth, and then the TC Helicon is on the mic stand. So that's what I have after a lot of collecting gear become my sort of like starter setup. But I think if you want to just, I mean, it really depends. Like, do you play an instrument, and are you going to be relying on that to be, your other accompaniment along with whatever's happening in Ableton? So I would say like a controller. I love my push. I stopped using it live because it just felt unnecessary and big. But I've seen people do amazing shows with just a push and a vocal mic, or a push and a synth. And yeah, so it kind of just depends, like a controller, an instrument, and a voice usually. And then, yeah, a Motu interface isn't expensive, really. You can get them used for pretty cheap.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
And with the Apollo, actually, one thing that we kind of went over, and one of the reasons why we're using loopback is because if she's running her vocal through live and she's got the Apollo in Zoom, we're going to hear her doubled, even if console is muted. So that's why we got loopback in play. So she was hearing herself fine, but the audience hears a doubled vocal if the vocal is going through live. So just a hot tip for you guys who are wondering about loopback. And I know there's a bunch of questions on that. I'm going to be doing like a full-on session on Wednesday of what I'm using in my stuff. So if you guys have questions on all that, you should come to that one on Wednesday. Another question, what your laptop are you using?
Let's take a look. It's not one of the new ones. I bought it used. I think it's like a 2016. 2014.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
And is that like the 16 gig RAM?
I think so. Yeah, it is.
Cool. Yeah. It's
pretty sturdy.
It's a good model. Yeah. This is like the pre touch bar, or is this a touch bar?
No touch bar.
Oh, touch bar. Yeah.
Yeah, no, none.
Oh, no touch bar. Yeah. That one's the one. The one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I upgraded to the new 16-inch like right before all this went down, and so it's been interesting. There's definitely some quirks, but it's it's good for the most part, especially because they changed the keyboard back to the way it was on the first Retina version, the one that you have. Anyway, so a lot of super technical questions. Why don't you guys come on Wednesday to my session if you want to get those answered. Any other questions for Keeley? Just like anything.
Oh, I like some of these at the top here. How do you deal with different different tempos in one live file for the whole show?
Yeah, you guys. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm just automating the tempo on my master. But this was also something that I was concerned about when I first started, because I was like, but songs aren't at the same tempos. So if you can see, I am automating. This one's at 79.5. This one's at 75. 138.7. That's that question answered.
Yeah, there we go. And I was also going to say, I'm going to go into more detail on that tomorrow with Sudan Archives, because I programmed her session, and we've got tons of like tempo change stuff in her session as well. So I can get into that a little bit more tomorrow. Let's see.
Do you use any other MIDI control messages to hardware?
Yeah, that was one that we didn't answer. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I send, and this was something that kind of, with both the Prophet and the Voice Live Touch, it was like deep manual diving to find all the CC numbers that correspond to things. So I'm sending something with my Prophet that was annoying was I would need to be at a different, like I'd be playing something and then it would switch quickly as I'd told it to, and then I'd need to be in a different octave than it was. So I can send messages to it to change the frequency of the oscillator. So it's instead of like an octave up, octave down, it's kind of doing the same thing. But for some reason that wasn't a command that I could send, but I could retune the oscillators to be a different octave, which was cool. And the same thing essentially. Yeah, I think it's mostly that kind of thing, like preset sounds and then octave changes.
Here's a cool one that just is coming in from April. At which point did you decide to go from playing a piano to running all the tracks and using the drum pads? Did you find your live shows were lacking just playing piano?
I did. I like to have a stripped down set available, and I like that I started there because I've done a handful of shows that are just voice and piano. But because I just keep getting deeper into the world of production, and I keep saying texture, but like that word is so important to me, and I felt after doing like a handful of shows at Hotel Cafe, which is a wonderful venue, sounds great, just very stripped down vocal and piano. I was just like, man, these songs aren't, they're cooler than this. They're cooler than this because this is a cool thing, but it shouldn't be the only thing for me. And so that's when I kind of started really knowing that I needed to bring in some of the production that I do in the studio to the stage. Yeah.
Nice. Great question. Let's see if we could take a couple more. I think we hit on a bunch of these questions that are in here. Some of the ones that were more geared towards me, like how to become an electronic creative. You can come on Wednesday and ask me questions such as that. Maybe some more like just less technical questions here that were asked, like, what do you think is one resource that every person involved in the music industry must have? Like, is there something that has helped you,
Yeah. I will preach this until forever. Learn how to record yourself. That's the one thing. Like I majored in audio engineering and production and vocals at music school. And the saving thing for me when I moved to LA was that I had a home studio, even though it was like super not expensive, fancy gear, just a basic setup. I was able to like survive as a vocalist for hire because of that. And so I think that is like the biggest empowering thing and useful thing is not having to rely on other people for recorded sound, essentially, regardless of if you're a vocalist or an instrumentalist. I think that's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it seems like that's been, with your live show and before that, I mean, me too, like when I first started out, I was like, okay, it's great that you can record me, but how do I do this myself? I just need control.
Totally.
Um,
Rachel had a good question. Keeley, did you start using Ableton to play live and then start producing with it after that? I used it to produce first, which is interesting because most of my friends that use Ableton have always started just dabbled in it from a live setting. So I think that it was actually really helpful to have a good understanding of it as a way of producing music before I really went into it being the live vehicle.
Heck yeah. The chat is just hilarious to me. I'm going to tell you guys the story of how we ended up on YouTube is because so many people RSVP'd for this, we couldn't do it in Zoom. And that was another one of the reasons why I was upgrading, because I was like, okay, we need to get hundreds of people in Zoom. So that's kind of the reason why we're on YouTube. So it's interesting for me because I'm so used to like being able to interact on Zoom. It's really different. Yeah.
That's a good one. Is your setup inspired by other setups you've seen, or did you develop it mostly independently?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the cool thing, like week 1, right, in Transmute, we were talking about finding inspiration from other people's setups, because this is such a modular, it can be done a million different ways. And so I knew like one woman show just kept being this like thing in my brain that I was like, I want to do it. And so we kind of went hunting for a bunch of different inspirations. And I mean, Rachel Collier is like
Shout
totally her, yeah, shout out.
out.
The stuff that she is just consistently putting out is insane, and very inspiring, because I want to have like a fully dedicated live space, because I always have to like tear my studio apart to rehearse for a live show. So it'd be nice to have it just like set up.
Yeah.
Also, Elohim has a really rad setup.
Mm-hmm.
Got different like keys and vocal stations kind of throughout. And I saw something in the chat earlier when we were talking about being kind of closed off, feeling by too much gear in front of an audience, was having different stations across a stage, which I think could be kind of cool. So maybe there's a way to take away the main thing that like is in front of you in the audience, and sort of like have it modularly, or I don't know. Sounds like a lot more gear.
Now my setup is like, it's like the studio slash performance. I had to like take apart my rig and plug it into my studio stuff, and it's like, all right, it's just one thing now. Not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So weird.
Weird.
Couple people asking about using Pro Tools for recording yourself, or do you use Ableton exclusively now?
I still do a lot of like vocals work for hire stuff, or yeah, like more technical, just like hired for film and TV stuff. And I'll always track that. And usually final vocals, if I know that I want to like really go in on a vocal recording and comp, and not do it in like a writing production space, I use Pro Tools,
Mm-hmm.
just because the comping and the playlisting is so much more advanced for that purpose than it is in Ableton. But a lot of times when I'm writing and producing, I'm only using Ableton, and so for me, vocals are very one and the same with both of those processes for me. So I'll record into Ableton when it's like that. But if it's like for a client, or I'm going in to do final vocals on my song, I'll go into Pro Tools.
Nice. All right. Well, is there any like last things that you see that you would want to touch on, Keely, before we gotta go, because Keely's busy schedule.
My main instrument is vocals, drums, piano. Vocals first, and then piano second, and then I guess Ableton is an instrument. Yeah, but yeah, I definitely like keys based, and voice is kind of where I come from.
Nice. All right. Well, I know there's a lot of other questions and things. There's only so much time that we have. But I'm doing this for 2 more days. So if you guys come back again tomorrow, and I will hopefully have no Zoom watermark and start on time. And I'm going to be working with Sudan Archives tomorrow. Amazing artist. Definitely check her stuff out. We're going to do some live collaboration stuff. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to go over my whole setup and my gear and everything that I'm using now, and just talk about my rig and get into stuff. So I'm so thankful that all of you joined us today. I see so many lovely faces out there. Well, icons of faces. I wish I could see your lovely faces. But thank you so much for showing up. Shout out to all my ladies out there in the music biz. I see you leveling up right now, sharing your gifts with the world and your talents. Definitely join me in the Transmute community, my Facebook group. If you guys want to just continue talking with other amazing folks. Only high vibe people are allowed in the group. We've got some questions, so you must answer the questions so that we know that you're going to add something to the group. So, but yeah, it's called the Transmute community, and we are doing a live from home, a Transmute from home contest. So if you guys join the group and submit a live performance, then you might win a session with me. So definitely join the group. Seeing so much love coming through the chats. Thank you so much for joining us, for all the love. Thank you, Keeley. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for sharing your gifts with us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Everyone go follow Keeley on Instagram and YouTube and all the things. And I will be back at 2 p.m. Pacific the next 2 days. And so I hope to see you guys then. Much love to everybody. Take care out there in the world. Bye.